Welcome back to the Convo Couch, everyone. Pastor Jardula here, and we have a special event for you tonight. With me today is my new friend, Matt Binder. Did I get it right, brother? Did I say it right?
You got it right. Matt Binder, that's right.
Well, as you know, Matt Bender and the Convo Couch kind of sit on two different sides of the fence when it comes to social media, independent media, news outlets out there. Obviously, we got into a little tassel on Twitter about the Boogaloo boys, about Medicare for All, about the whole march, maybe a little bit of this and that. And we decided to have a little friendly debate or discussion. So that's why we're here today, correct?
That's correct. And I'm looking forward to being here and talking with you guys. Thanks for reaching out. I always say, regardless of where anyone stands on the ideological spectrum, I always respect when someone engages. And that's what we're doing here. We're going to have a discussion, a debate. And I give you props, and I give Fiorella props for doing it. And that's, I always say that whether someone's a right winger or whatever, if you engage, you go up a little bit in my book for sure. Just for doing that.
Well, good. I'm glad I went up a little bit in your book. And to be honest with you, I'm not crazy about some of the people that I don't know if you necessarily work with them, but I think there's this kind of connection by association. I don't know what your work relationship is with Sam Cedar or Emma or whatnot. I am not crazy about those people, but I've always had like a little soft spot for Matt Bender, and I want to start off with apologizing for saying that you're nothing more than a keyboard warrior. I think that was wrong for me to do that. It was a little heated moment behind the keyboard myself. In fact, I think it was your work that you did on Kyle Rittenhouse that really persuaded me. I thought it was some excellent work you did that really persuaded me to say, hey, listen, I think that Mr. Kyle Rittenhouse is guilty of committing murder because what Matt Bender, no, I don't say Bender, Binder, right?
It's all right. Binder.
Jesus Christ. Now. What Matt Bender pointed out that Kyle Rittenhouse kind of brandished his weapons several times. He was also away from the place he was guarding. So that work you did, that long video you did, I was actually in North Georgia on assignment when I was watching, and I think you did some excellent work, and you actually persuaded me by your argument. So apologize for calling you a keyboard warrior. I think you, like I said, for me, I hold you in a little higher standards than those other people. I don't know what you're.
Don't even worry about it. Yeah. I love it. I love the heat and the So don't worry about it. It's all in good fun. So let's put that aside. Don't worry.
Yeah.
Also,
cool.
I appreciate your kind words about the Rittenhouse videos and reports I did, and hopefully I can persuade you on some other topics right here tonight.
You know what? I'm looking forward to us trying to persuade each other and see where we end up at the end of this whole thing. Obviously, ladies and gentlemen, Fiorella will be coming on for the second half. In fact, I'm going to read the text message I sent to Matt today. And it said, Matt, how about the first part? Me and you, we talk about, is there a line that can be crossed as pertaining to who we should build bridges with, like the Boogaloo boys, because that's where our argument started. And then we should also digress back to the Jimmy and Sam thing. Who was right? Should we settle for the lesser of two evils? And then later on, you're going to debate with Fiorella about are the squad allies, and did Nina turn a blind eye to the Medicare for All march? And did it cost her the election? Obviously, you made a video criticizing Fiorella's points on what Nina did. So that's what that's what we have in store for today. And I'm glad we can do that. And just for the record, so you know, Matt, I don't know if you know, I don't work for Jimmy Dore. I'm not associated with Jimmy Dore. I am a dirtbag leftist. You can call me a dirtbag leftist, what the Daily Beast called me and stuff. We were in the same article, but once again, we might align on a lot of things, but I don't work for him. And I think that despite where or who you work for, I always said that Matt has his own opinions, and that's why I'm looking forward to what we're about to do today.
Besides that one topic where we're going to be obviously talking about Jimmy Dore and Sam Cedar, I have no intention of bringing up anyone else's views and putting them on either you or Fiorella. We're going to talk about what you guys have espoused and said and what I have espoused and said.
Cool. So thank you to everybody who jumped into the Rokfin today and the YouTube. Remember to like, share, and subscribe. Matt, are you streaming from anywhere that people should know about?
I am not. I decided let's keep it on one chat. Afterwards, I'll put it on my channel for my viewers if they didn't know this was going on, the replay. But live, we're here on your channel, but people can check me out, youtube.com/Matt Binder. Subscribe there now. I do a live show at least once a week, sometimes twice a week, and I put up videos throughout the week too.
Cool. Well, maybe if we have another debate, we can do it on your channel next time. So it'll be
Sounds good.
even, like, football games, home and away. Okay, do you want to start off with the first 2 minutes, or do you want me to kind of go into the first 2 minutes about where my thoughts are? Because I think I should probably start off, give you a little bit of advantage to hear where I'm coming from, and then we can go from there. Does that sound good?
Yeah, why don't you kick it off and
Okay.
get us started?
So, once again, I think we were talking about, is there a line to draw in the sand from who we should talk to and who we shouldn't talk to? I remember when we were kind of going back and forth, you had mentioned to me and you'd say, is it okay to talk to Nazis or something, right? Was that something you said to me, or?
Right, I think it was I said the KKK, right?
The KKK, the Ku Klux Klan. And I think that, me personally, that we have a little difference of opinion when we look at things at the big spectrum. I'm not saying that you wouldn't recognize power in corporations, but it seems to me that when we do have our disagreements, that you pay attention to left versus right, and a guy like me will pay attention to more up versus down. Would you say that's a fair assessment, or no?
I mean, we can go with it, and we could get more into that in a little bit. But we could say that's the case for now, just so we can get started here.
Okay, so the reason why I believe that we should talk to everybody is, once again, and I was quoted in the Daily Beast article when I was out there in the streets, and I said, listen, when I saw Boogaloo boys, in this particular case, it was Black Lives Matter and Proud Boys fighting with each other, and the quote that was given, that was quoted by Daily Beast about me was like, hey guys, you need to stop this. You have more in common than the people who are controlling us upstairs. And that's where we might have a little bit of a difference, because right now I don't feel like, when we vote for the lesser of two evils, and I think that is a failed, flawed strategy, because we're no longer kind of fighting for incremental gains. We're more or less fighting for holding on to incremental losses. In other words, we say, okay, Joe Biden, he might be not as bad as Trump, but he's not going to give us anything we want. In fact, we're voting for him. In fact, if we do decide to vote for him, the fact that he won't do as many bad things as Donald Trump. And I feel that's a failed, flawed, once again, strategy, because when we do elect these people like a Barack Obama, they tend to do way more damage because they're under the protection of being blue no matter who, a Democrat, whatnot, and they can cause more damage. For instance, Obama increased militarism by almost 2,400%. You know what I'm saying? He literally militarized the police. He brought all that military grade home from Iraq, put it into the hands of our policemen, and who suffered more by that, right? People of color under the commands of the police department. Also, he did another thing. Everybody says he wasn't as bad as George Bush because George Bush committed American troops. Obama brought them home, but then he increased drone warfare, which then again killed twice as many innocent people across seas, not even militants, than before. So for me, I think it's really wrong when we play this lesser of two evils situation, and we kind of put these people above everybody else, these people on the left over people on the right, because it comes back to bite us in the ass, and we're getting nothing we want. Now, as far as talking to actual voters and people out in the street, to me, there's a big difference between, for instance, a person like AOC or Kamala Harris or Joe Biden, who will actually legislate racist policies, as opposed to some dude from the South who wears a Donald Trump hat, who will use the N-word all the time, whatnot. He has no power. You know what I'm saying? And I think there's a big difference with trying to build allegiances with people, trying to convince them that their racism is wrong and try to persuade them because they're people of no power, than dealing with people like AOC, like Kamala Harris and Joe Biden, who are going to legislate some of the most racist, harmful things in the world. So that's my opening. You can give me your shtick on that and where you feel when it comes to that situation.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I would say I agree with you for sticking with the fact that obviously politicians have power, and the average citizen does not, and we should be looking to organize with people, with working people across the political spectrum, with people across no matter what their race is, what their religion is, their gender, whatever. We should be working together to create a better world for everybody, of course. But where I don't even draw the line when it comes to talking with someone, and this is sort of where our whole discussion I think is based on, especially when you sparked this debate by bringing up my Boogaloo Boy video, which just to bring up his name, because that's where this all came from. Yeah. Jimmy Dore had a Boogaloo Boy on his show, And that's what made me create this video, sort of warning people about the various things that were talked about in that interview with Jimmy Dore and that Boogaloo boy. I believe his name is Magnus. You've had him on the Convo Couch.
He's a friend of mine, Magnus Panvidia. Yes.
Right. Now, here's my thing. Now, I don't have a problem with you or Jimmy Dore or anyone really having on Magnus Panvidia to talk with him, to have a debate with him, to have a discussion with him, to try to understand where he's coming from and, you know, knock down some of his more, like you brought up before, not so great, maybe racist, maybe other ways which might not line up with your views, and try to make him understand. But when I saw the Jimmy Dore interview, and I did watch one time he was on your show, that's not really what I see Dore or you guys do. You know, it really is just like a fun little chit chat with Magnus Panvidia so he can share and spread his Boogaloo boy beliefs. And it really seems like they go unchallenged whenever he's on your show, when he was on Jimmy Dore's show. I mean, I saw Jimmy Dore basically go, you know, goo goo gaga over this guy saying things that sounded maybe slightly leftist to him, but in the bigger picture really isn't, because sure, there are some areas where you guys have the same goals, like, but not, you know, you want something immediate, you know, you want to take down the state, for example. But what he wants in the end game is totally different from what, you know, someone who is like a left-leaning anarchist would want if that was their end game.
How do you know that though? I just want to know how. Yeah, because you've never talked to Magnus, right? And
I've never talked to Magnus, and if he reached out to me, I would be glad to have a discussion with him. Like I said, I always love to engage, but he's never reached out to me. Someone made me aware that he did create some sort of video response to me. I didn't. This was like yesterday, so I just caught a little bit of it. I don't want to talk about that now because he's not here to defend that, but you know, from what I've seen of Magnus, let me ask you something. What would you say is the main tenet of being, you know, a leftist? Obviously, there's various other, you know, anti-imperialism, anti-racism, but overall, anyone who is on the left, where they consider themselves to be a socialist, a communist, or a left-leaning anarchist, there is one thing they want to do. What would you say that is?
Well, I mean, I think that would center more around labor, right? That's the main thing. When, for me, being a leftist, it's about, you know, seizing the means of productions. It's about actually creating a labor force where people can, you know, obviously have a decent standard of living. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
That's the thing that's,
And to do that, the ultimate end goal is to dismantle the capitalist system, correct?
I don't think it's necessarily the capitalist system. I think it's more the imperialistic, oligarchic system. I don't know the answer to where we're going to be. I in fact, think we should have some form of a mixed economy. You know what I'm saying? That's me personally, a little socialism, a little communism, a little capitalism, and figure something out. My main thing is that we eliminate the elitism, because that's the first thing that needs to be removed first. It's elitism. That's our number one problem, because elitism bleeds imperialism, which bleeds capitalism, which is the system that keeps imperialism in play, you know what I'm saying, which breeds separation across the board, you know what I'm saying? So for me personally, it's not about getting rid of just capitalism. I don't have those answers. I like to have them. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Actually a little bit surprised by your answer, because to get everything that I assumed that someone with your politics would want, and they're you know, idealistically my politics too. The end goal seems to be that we have to dismantle the capitalist system, because you're talking about elitism, right? But who creates the elites? You seem to be coming at it where you think that government is the one in charge, when in actuality, they're really not. I mean, I wish.
No, I don't think government's in charge. I think the elites are in charge of government, which are in charge of capitalism.
Well, how
Well, I mean, elitism. I mean, I don't even, like, I have very mixed views. I'm an independent thinker, you know what I'm saying? So, I mean, me personally, with everything going on, I don't even think nation states pull the strings right now as much as the elites and these corporations and these people who have so much influence on governments around the world. So, I mean, it's not just about eliminating capitalism, because if we eliminate capitalism, who else is going to take the reins? Another set of elites. You know what I'm saying? My whole ideology, Matt, is like we get rid of these assholes and then we can all get in a room and decide what's best for us all. It's not just about eliminating capitalism because that won't solve the problem. Who's pulling the strings of capitalism? That's the issue for me. So.
Right, but capitalism is set up where there'll always be these elites in charge. If it's not the current elites, it's the next generation of elites. I mean, that's just how it works.
I mean, that also happens in systems of communism and systems of socialism, right? It does happen too as well, where elites can control any ism that you're into. In my personal opinion, if elites can separate us and control it, no matter what. So whatever you're into, it's about eliminating the power structure up top. And that's where I think we have a big difference the way we look at power. You might look at it systematically and saying we remove capitalism, we remove the problem. I say no, the problem's still there. It's elitism. It's always been a group of elites running things around the world. And that's just my personal opinion.
Right. But but we know what puts these elites there. And it's basically you have these billionaires, these major corporations who are basically calling the shots and and they are the elites, and they're the ones who choose who the elites are. And essentially they choose, if not who our politicians are, many times they do, they certainly choose how our politicians vote.
Yeah. Authoritarianism is a big problem, right? I mean, that's at the end of the day, that's also one of the big issues here and stuff. So, but let's get back to who we should talk to and who we shouldn't talk to and stuff.
Right. So I don't have a problem with you having Magnus Penvidea on your show. I just said he could come on mine if he'd like, and we'd just talk about things. But I just never see any pushback about who the Boogaloo Boys are and how, they're founded and why we should be creating this alliance with a group of people who at their core were created on a racist forum, espousing racist views. I mean, the name of their organization, their group, their movement, whatever they'd like to call it. I know there's no centralized organization. It's just this group of people who call themselves Boogaloo Boys. But at this, there's a place where this name came from. Yeah. And it seems to me that if you are against those things, you simply would not be a Boogaloo Boy. I mean, there's ways to show that you love your guns and you hate the police that don't require you to be a Boogaloo Boy. Because once you say you're a Boogaloo Boy, all that racist baggage that comes with it comes along with you, quite frankly, even if you claim to be a non-racist Boogaloo.
Can I push back for a second, Matt, or did you have something more to say?
No, go ahead.
Jimmy Dore is not the one who gave us the insight to the Boogaloo Boys. You know who we talked to about the Boogaloo Boys first? Black Lives Matter 757. Okay? That's who told us that they worked with the Boogaloo Boys first, that they came out and joined their rallies to stand with them. A group of Black Lives Matter people from Richmond, Virginia. Those are the ones who said, no, there's a misconception out there like people, Matt, are putting out there about the Boogaloo Boys. The Boogaloo Boys are different than us when it comes to a lot of political issues, but for the most part, they're against what the government's doing, and they're against the working class of people. And that's why we stand with them and they stand with us. In fact, when we went out to Richmond, Virginia, we got to meet some of the members of Black Lives Matter 757 and interview them. There was a Boogaloo Boy there at that funeral. You know what I'm saying? One in particular, just one. So the bond that they formed, and at the end of the day, I mean, who should we honestly listen to, Matt? I mean, and I'm not trying to put you down. Some guy by the name of Matt who writes a story about them, who's done some investigating, he's seen some issues and whatnot, and he says, or people who have actually worked with people like Magnus Penvidea and the Boogaloo Boys. And these are Black Lives Matter. Well, this is a black man saying, no, we stand by the Boogaloo Boys because they have stood by us. So.
Well, as far as I know, BLM 757, I believe you said is their name.
Yep.
They've never worked with Magnus, as far as I know. They're based in Virginia, like you said.
Yep.
And Magnus is very straightforward about saying how you can't compare Michigan Boogaloo Boys to any other Boogaloo Boys around the world.
Jakari and Magnus have worked together. They've worked together. I mean, that's
well. Have you looked into BLM 757 because they have been basically banished from the national Black Lives Matter movement.
Yeah, and I think that's a good thing. You know what I'm saying? I'm sorry. That's my personal opinion.
Do you know why they've been banished from the national Black Lives Matter
movement? Well, what did you hear by it?
Well, the guy who runs the BLM 757 apparently has said some incredibly misogynistic things. He apparently has espoused women's choice views.
Have you heard these things? I mean, because I haven't heard him say these things.
If I don't have them on, I didn't know we were going to bring up BLM 757, but I certainly have seen them online before when I've looked into that group, because I did find it weird that whenever we want to hear a positive spin on the Boogaloo Boys, there is just this one group who uses the Black Lives Matter movement name, BLM 757, always willing to put out for the Boogaloo Boys in front and basically back them up. It's this one group that you are mentioning, and everyone else who says we should team up with the Boogaloo Boys. It's this one group that everyone seems to take their word for. Well, Boogaloo Boys being great.
Let me say this much: I don't say we should necessarily team up with them right now. I'm saying that it's the people versus the elites. That's always been my mindset. And let me just say this much. Go ahead, man. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
I mean, no, don't worry. Magnus Panvidia has been very upfront about being an anarcho-capitalist, and I can't think of a more anti-leftist view than anarcho-capitalism. Anything you ever want as a leftist, it goes directly against what an ANCAP wants. An ANCAP literally wants to completely dismantle the state. So Medicare for all, Social Security, every good welfare program, every good social safety net program that the left actually holds up as, wow, this is actually shows this is what government can do when they do good.
Yeah.
Gone. And ANCAP wants to completely replace all of that with private enterprise. Police, private enterprise. The court system, they want insurance companies to run the court system through arbitration. If you are worried about elites, I can't think of any system that would bring about more powerful elites than anarcho-capitalism.
And that might be a fair argument, but once again, I think we're looking at this totally different, because if yourself, right? So if you're a Democrat, do you agree with everything all the Democrats say at all time? Or do you have places where you will disagree with them, right? You know what I'm saying? I think it's unfair to say, oh, it's an anarcho-capitalist. On every single issue, these people are going to agree exactly alike, and at the end of the game, this is what they want to do. I would beg to differ and say if you talk to people like the Boogaloo Boys, if you talk to Magnus, they will agree with the same sentiment, is that we get rid of the elites, we get rid of the people of power, then we put ourselves in a room and we decide what's best for us. That's the mentality of the whole situation. But also, digressing back to Black Lives Matter, do you know how many groups Black Lives Matter have moved away from the national Black Lives Matter group?
Right, of course.
I mean, you know, right? So, I mean, we can't sit there and say that the national Black Lives Matter is this standing beacon of light, because they've also had very serious accusations about how they funneled money into the top organizers of Black Lives Matter and not distribute that money down below to the people who needed it most. So, I mean, when you use that argument, well, this group has moved away from black, it's still a black man that I listen to, a man in the street, an activist that I've marched with and saw him, went to a funeral with, you know what I'm saying? So, I mean, it's still a man of color who I'm listening to, and his organizations and people.
It's really funny to see you say that, though, as someone who I assume is completely anti-identity politics. And that's what you're going with here. I mean, would you follow the word of Ben Carson, of Tim Scott?
Absolutely.
I mean, the idea that you're listening to him because he's black. I mean,
But you say that they're racist and they have racist tendencies, right? Well, that's why
they're trying to. Okay, so maybe we should go backwards a little bit here. The Boogaloo Boys have a very distinct strategy in how they basically say they're going to support Black Lives Matter movements and show up down there with guns, even though nobody else down there at most of these rallies, including Black Lives Matter protesters, comes armed. And they know that they go down there to escalate. They say they support these movements basically so they could go down there and escalate, because at the end of the day, what they want, it's right in the name, they want a civil war. They want a second civil war. And a lot of them specifically state, I mean, what else does a civil war mean in this country but a race war? I mean, we saw what happened.
I don't think that's true, though. I don't think that's true. I really don't believe that's true. And I think you need to talk to more of these people, whatnot, to find out a little bit more, because you're going off hearsay when you've never even talked to these people in this group. And even if they tell you that, that still might not be true. But you're coming from a place that where you're finding stuff on social media to put it, to put that into perspective. That's how all Boogaloo boys are. And when you go back to what you said about Boogaloo boys are different over here than they are different over there, they are. They're a decentralized group. I asked a ton of questions because I wanted to make sure that where I was coming from, I was educated and I knew about these guys. And the Boogaloo boys in Washington don't talk to the Boogaloo boys in Michigan. And at the end of the day, they don't want a civil war. And in fact, that's what the reason why I talk to them, Matt. Wait a second. I'll let you speak. The reason why I do talk to people like that, and I will talk to Proud Boys, and I'll talk to Boogaloo Boys, Proud Boys, Oath Keepers, all these assholes, right? Whatever, all these groups and stuff like that, because I believe they are being pushed by the elites to start a color revolution. And at the end of the day, I don't believe that people like Magnus want a civil war. Now, you might find a Boogaloo boy in Washington who does want a civil war, but the reason why I talk to these people is because I don't want a civil war. And I think it's stupid when we're fighting each other in the streets with people who have little power, while the people who do have power at top control the narrative. Sorry for cutting you off, brother. Go ahead.
No, I was cutting you off, so it's all good. I mean, again, I would go back to my original point, was that if you don't want a race war, then why are you part of a group who has a name that literally comes from wanting a second civil war, a race war? That's where it comes from.
No, Boogaloo boys come from the movie Breakin' 2, Electric Boogaloo.
Yeah, and why do you think they picked that name? Like, what in that movie?
Please educate me. I saw the movie 3 times in the movie theater. I'm 48 years old. I was a breaker, man. I used to.
Yeah, because there's nothing in the movie. There's no like deep meaning behind this. In 4chan, they basically, in a pro-gun forum on 4chan a couple of years ago, they basically started spreading a meme where if they wanted a second civil war, they joked by calling it Civil War II Electric Boogaloo. And that's where they got the name Boogaloo Boys. It's as simple as that. Like, you see in the movie, what in the movie directly correlates to anything that they do or espouse? It makes no sense without that context that it came from 4chan, from that meme, Civil War II, Electric Boogaloo. Yeah. To say you don't want a civil war and be a Boogaloo boy, the way you prove that is by not being
but that's because what one schmuck said, and when you talk to Magnus and you talk to other people there, they try to root out anybody who's a racist. They don't want them in their organization. They're very clear about what they do and what they want to do, and that's to take out the elites and the government that's controlling everybody. You know what I'm saying? And like I said, we might not agree on a lot of things, but I think you're taking one little comment and saying that's everything that represents the whole groups. I just asked you as a leftist, are you going to agree with everything the Democratic Party says? And of course you're not going to say that. You know what I'm saying? You're going to have differences of opinion. So I think that the fact that you're kind of stamping this on this whole group without even talking to a lot of them and not even getting to know them is just inaccurate and wrong. But that's just my personal opinion. I hear where you're coming from, but I just disagree strongly with you.
Have you talked to every member of the alt-right to know that they are racists?
No.
I mean, would you say
what do you consider alt-right, though? I mean,
yeah. Baked Alaska, Richard Spencer, Jack Posobiec, Mike Cernovich. I mean, would you say that those guys espouse racist views, or would you say that they are on our side?
Well, here's the thing. I don't know any of them personally. I have a little experience with Jack Posobiec. You know what I'm saying? But I'm not going to speak for what they are or what they represent. And once again, to me, and I'm going to say this again, a person with no power who's a racist is not half as worth paying attention to than a person with power who puts in racist policies. That is the issue. And let me be honest with you too as well. Would you say that anybody who wants to build a wall is racist?
Oh, yeah.
See, that's where we disagree.
If you're chanting build a wall along with Donald Trump, which we all know exactly specifically what that means. I mean, there's no ifs, ands. Now, if you're saying that I think all people who believe that are evil, no, there's obviously a lot of normal, everyday people who just aren't in the political bubble, who became fans of Donald Trump through their own social circles and might not even completely understand what they're saying and what they're espousing and what this all means, what they're actually saying.
Do you understand what they're all saying and espousing?
Oh, because I understand what they're all saying, but the question is whether they understand what they're saying. I don't think
because we have a different perspective, right? Like, because for instance, like my uncle, right, who is, he's a big Donald Trump supporter, right? He thinks that we should build a wall because he thinks that we can only take care of so many people that are in the United States, and he also has this misled opinion that an undocumented worker, which he would call an illegal immigrant, and I would tell him all the time, it's an undocumented worker, not a legal immigrant, because language does matter, that they're taking away benefits from a veteran that a veteran should get. So do I think that's racist that they feel that way? No, I think a lot of people, if everybody was starving in the village, and they would have their own children, they'd feed their own children first before they fed the rest of the village. You know what I'm saying? That's the mentality they have. They're wrong, but that doesn't make them racist. You know what I'm saying?
I would say it certainly does make them racist. Now, whether they want to be racist or they realize they're being racist, that's a completely another question. But actions speak louder than words, and what they're saying and what they're doing are, they're saying they don't want the other, in this case, immigrants from Mexico escaping violence in Central America, Latin America. They don't want them coming in because they think that they're going to take something from them or take something from more deserving Americans, which is just not the case because, as you know, these are the same people who say that America could do anything. There's nothing we can't handle. But apparently we can't handle a couple of brown people coming in and making sure that they get set up and escape certain death in their own country.
Okay.
I mean, the idea
which we're responsible for, by the way. You know what I'm saying? We're responsible.
Of course.
Yeah, we don't. That's what we never talk about, and that's what bothers me.
Oh, we don't disagree on that at all.
Yeah. Let me ask you a question when you're ready. So, good.
No, but the idea that that's not racist, maybe your uncle is coming from a good place and doesn't realize he's being racist, but that certainly doesn't mean you're not being racist.
Okay, so let me ask this question. Let's just say, for argument's sake, he is racist. Who's more dangerous, that person there or Joe Biden, who might be all nice and fuzzy and loving right now? He might have seen religion. He wrote the 1994 crime book, which was racist as hell. Who's more dangerous? Who's more dangerous? AOC, who says, I'll defer to the caucus leadership when it comes to Venezuela, or that dude who's just sitting, once again, with the Trump hat on, drinking beer, using the N-word? Which person is more dangerous? And which person could we change more?
Right. I first of all, I just want to put up front, I never said one was more dangerous than the other.
Oh, I'm saying that. I'm saying
okay,
that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Of course, the people in power are more dangerous.
Okay.
But what I'm saying is that does not mean you need to ally with people who specifically want the opposite of what your end goal is. I mean, they're going to stab you in the back eventually.
But that's what you're saying. We don't know that, right?
Oh, we know that.
No, we don't. Because let me tell you something. Let me ask you a question. All right, let me ask you a question. What fuels racism? What caused racism? Particularly in America, what really fuels and makes a racist person racist? Aside from the fact that he's been taught that way, what elevates a person to be more racist?
Oh, and for most people, what makes someone more racist is the need for a scapegoat to explain their own, their own situation, whether it's poverty or some sort of negative thing that happened in their life. That's usually how people fall down the white supremacist rabbit hole. That's usually how white supremacist organizations bring mostly young white men into their movements. They basically see a bunch of downtrodden, down on their luck, economically hurt people, and they go, hey, you know who is the person who's responsible for that? It's the Mexicans, it's the Muslims, it's the black people.
Cool.
And that's where that comes from.
Let me all right, so I think we're somewhat on this similar page, whatnot. I believe all forms of existing bigotry are hyper-inflated at times of economic distress. In other words, you strip people of their resources, they become more likely to blame somebody who doesn't look like them, right? Like, the reason why I'm poor is because that black person across the street, they get, college education that I have to pay for. You're telling me that I'm privileged right now, and when I'm almost one paycheck from being out in the streets. So I believe, and you look at a lot of these groups like the KKK that you once talked about, a lot of these people who go into these groups are just economically stressed. So in other words, if we had a system where, well, I mean, that's just my personal opinion. You can disagree. But if we had a system
Go ahead.
where we relieved and we took away so much economic stress, because everybody's like, they're stressed out. They're one paycheck from being out in the street. We removed that entity. You know what I'm saying? Now we start breaking bread together. We start talking together. You know what I'm saying? If people are on a good economic system, right, and they can relax a little bit more, they don't have to worry about how they're going to pay rent or that car payment and stuff. Now the black man, his daughter goes to school with the white man. They're forced and they're a lot more relaxed and they can talk to each other and build bridges and build bonds. I mean, would you not agree that we do have a mentality from the elites up there that is divide and conquered, keep everybody fighting with each other so they can run off with all the resources?
I mean, sure, there is that somewhat to an extent, but the idea that there's not people who actually just are straight up racist. I mean, where do you think these, where do you think these movement builders are? Like, these aren't the people who are just economically downtrodden. These are the people who actually deep down believe that black people are inferior, that Mexicans are inferior, that Muslims are inferior. Like, the idea that that all racism is just economically motivated. I mean, we've seen that.
I think it's the major motivation thing, the major factor. I don't want to say there's not more to it. It's the major. I'm sorry for interrupting again, brother.
No. For people who, like I was talking about before, there are people who really aren't that politically active, and they are in social circles depending on where they grew up, how they grew up. And when I mean where, I mean socially, economically, and also location wise. And they are maybe, just like I was talking about before, someone like your uncle who may be coming from a good-hearted place, not realizing that the views they're espousing are racist. Now, those people, I can say, probably do fall for the white supremacist goal of scapegoating Mexicans, Muslims, black people in order to bring people over to their side. Sure, I'll give you that. But there are a lot of people who also are true believers in white supremacist ideology. I mean, who's convincing these people who are falling for the scapegoat strategy? It's the true believers. I mean, we see all the time white people are willing to vote against their own interests in order to hurt people who they view as lower than them. I mean, there's a whole movement on the right that literally believes that black people are just born inferior to white people. They have a lower IQ. There's an entire pseudoscience that completely revolves around it, that people like Tucker Carlson have people like Charles Murray on his show to espouse that view. I mean, there is, like, Charles Murray and Tucker Carlson are not the downtrodden, economically hurt white man. I mean, These are guys who are true believers and really do deep down in their heart believe that white people are superior to everybody else.
Okay.
I mean, I don't, there's always going to be that. And
I think a lot of it is spitballing and assuming that these people are this way, where I think a lot of people have issues and it could be changed and whatnot. And well, here's my question to you. If it's a flat-out racist, should we not talk to that person? I mean, I'm kind of getting the sense that you didn't have a problem with us talking or platforming Magnus. Your problem was that we didn't push back enough in certain areas, is what I'm saying.
Right.
Okay.
And that's always been...
But let's talk about the racist person.
On my show, I've actually had a Caitlin Bennett, the Kent State gun girl, on my show. I have a number of right-wingers on my show previously. We talked about numerous issues, and I pushed back super hard. It was more, like I said, it was a more debate. I wouldn't call any of them my friends, but they came on the show. I said the same thing that I said to you at the beginning. I always respect anyone who engages, and I will engage with anyone who wants to, anytime, anywhere.
Okay. So what about a racist, though? A racist person? Should we not talk to that person, or should we talk to that person?
I would say Caitlin Bennett is a racist, and I had her on my show.
Should I talk to David Duke? Should I have David Duke on my show?
I mean, I would ask you, what would you be looking to get out of that conversation with David Duke?
Well, I would push back against his ideology of hate and say, hey, man, I think you're wrong over here, and what drives that hate, and try to figure out where he's coming from. You know what I'm saying? I mean, I look at a person like Daryl Davis, right? The black man, the jazz musician who's taken the actual Ku Klux Klan outfits from them, and he takes them and he keeps them as a souvenir because he was able to talk to this racist and convince him that his ways were wrong and change his ways. You know what I'm saying? So I'm just curious to your thoughts about who we should actually talk about and who we shouldn't talk to.
Well, what you want to do on your own personal time, like that individual spoke with members of the KKK and had heart-to-hearts, and but he wasn't putting them on air and saying, "Oh yeah, I agree with you. I agree. Oh, you're basically a leftist," and showing a bunch of viewers, hundreds of people in case of other YouTubers, probably multiple thousands, if not hundreds of thousands, that, hey, this Boogaloo boy is on our side. I mean, to me, that's the difference. You want to do something like that on your own personal time and not provide someone with a platform and be all friendly with them, I don't have a problem with that. If you're going to have them on your show and show people that their ideology and not pick apart their ideology and show that, hey, we could actually just let this slide, no big deal, work with them. That's a problem to me. Again, if you're going to have them on the show to pick apart their ideology and try to get them to come to your side, that's totally cool to have that debate. But if it's just, a friendly chit chat, then you can do that off the air.
I think that's where we would differ, because if you were to have Magnus on his show, you're going to have to, you'd be actually telling him that his ideology is different than what he's saying it is to you. So, I mean, that's where it would, because I think we all ask, we say, what are you for? You for this, you for that,
Well, Magnus Panvidia has called himself an ANCAP. I've seen some of his tweets and some of his videos previously. He's an ANCAP. I mean, the idea that he's never said he is, you could just look it up. I can find audio.
I get you, but once we get, I don't want to go down that conversation again. You call yourself a leftist. You're not going to agree with every single thing a Democrat says or a leftist says. You're going to have different opinions in different areas where you're going to just not agree. You know what I'm saying? So I don't want to go down that rabbit hole, but
Well, I would say
I think you put people in boxes too much. Like you put, you know what I'm saying? Like this is them. It's kind of like trying to put somebody like me in a box where I have different opinions. I'm all over the place when it comes to everything. I consider myself a leftist libertarian because to me the most important things are civil liberties, elections, freedom of speech, you know what I'm saying? But you might not call yourself a libertarian at all, but yet you'll probably agree with me against censorship and for our civil liberties. I mean, you know what I'm saying? I don't think we should classify people. It's an ANCAP, this is what they are, bada, 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 bada. You know what I'm saying? I just, yeah.
Well, there are specific tenets that make someone, I mean, we see this argument all the time where Democrats call themselves progressives. And a lot of people, quite frankly, specifically in your audience, are usually the first to put people in that box of who the true leftist is, to be quite frank. I'm sure you're smiling because you know that. So
no, I just don't think you can cast that upon, I don't say we're true leftists, I would say we're more true progressive. Because we are actually progressing after new information where I see you guys, unfortunately, going to the same type of strategy that has failed and not worked, the voting for the lesser of two evil shit. But I mean,
I honestly just have to say that it is quite hilarious to me to see. I'm like quickly just looking at the chat every now and then, and it's quite hilarious to me to specifically see your audience call me a purist. I swear to God. Convo Couch audience on Twitter, you know who we're talking about with the Tulsi Gabbard flower in there. They are the most, you're not a true leftist, I'm the pure leftist people I've ever met in my life. So
but I'm not that way. You're debating me. That's the audience. I'm sure when I go to your audience, there are going to be people throwing shade at me, Matt.
I'm saying it's really funny.
Well, yeah, well, once again, I don't. First of all, this whole ideology that left is better than right, just because I'm a leftist, is a failing strategy. The way we're not going to win any debate or win anybody over in a conventional manner, especially on the right, to say that you're wrong and I'm right and you have to come over there. It's going to be met through compromise. I consider myself a populist more than I consider myself a leftist, even though I have a lot of leftist ideology. You know what I'm saying, brother?
But even that's surprising to me. This goes straight over into that same argument that I was just talking about before with your audience of purists. You would be raking the progressives in the Democratic Party over the coals if they were looking for a compromise with the Republicans. Yet you're saying we should compromise.
Whoa! Don't project anything. Explain what you mean. If in fact the progressives came out and said, "Listen, we're going to stand with the Rand Pauls and the Thomas Massie on an anti-censorship bill," you think I'd be against that?
Whoa, there are tons and tons of progressives in the Democratic Party who often just happen to align with some of those guys' views on when it comes to big tech and censorship.
Yeah, so and the progressives are not there. In the progressives.
They are. Oftentimes they are.
Come on, Matt. Where? I've heard AOC call for more censorship. I've seen them all saying that it was okay to deplatform Donald Trump. It's okay to deplatform crazy guys like Alex Jones.
Well, that's not anything that they have any say over, because a private organization, a private company in your capitalist system can do whatever they'd like.
All right, that's a different debate, and I don't want to get into that right now. That's a different debate. Listen, Fiorella's in the bullpen; she's waiting. So let's get to this last little part real quick and stuff. I think that was a great spirited debate, and we can talk about this more. We can do part 2 on your show and have some fun with it. Okay, let's talk about the other part about why we are destined to be together today, Matt. Obviously, Sam Cedar and Jimmy Dore had this debate. It was a very short debate about voting for the lesser of two evils, where Sam said, well, no, you have to vote for Hillary Clinton over Donald Trump because of A, B, C, and D. And for just so everybody knows, I voted for Hillary Clinton that election in 2016 in Florida. I was very confused about what to do. First of all, I don't even know if my mom mailed in my ballot. She said that she withheld it, but I did vote. I conceded, and I said I'm going to vote for Hillary Clinton. Was that still a right move to say that? And is it better to vote for the lesser of what you consider the lesser of two evils, or is there something to be said of that? Or are you at the point right now where I'm saying the Democratic Party is dead? Once again, we're not fighting for incremental gains. We're actually holding on to incremental losses. And I think that is awful. What is your thoughts and opinions on that right now? In other words, if you can go back in time, did you vote for Hillary Clinton over Donald Trump, and would you do it again?
Oh yeah, I voted for Hillary Clinton over Donald Trump.
Man, don't be so excited about it, Matt.
No, I mean it was a really easy thing to do. No, I'm not someone who goes around saying you have to vote for whoever you vote for. I actually think that I actually think you have to vote for the lesser two evils. I actually think that's not helpful. I'm sure when you chose to vote for Hillary Clinton, it wasn't because people were nagging you to do so and trying to villainize you if you didn't.
I did. I was called a misogynist if I didn't vote for Hillary Clinton. Right. Because if I vote for the pussy grabber, or if I voted for Jill Stein in a swing state like Florida, I was doing the wrong thing. Please continue.
Right, but I'm sure that's not what helped get you to where you ended up voting for. I'm sure that did the opposite. I'm sure there were moments where you were like, shit, maybe I don't want to vote for this person because of what these people are saying to me. I'm sure that's how many people feel. So I'm not one of those people who say you need to do that. I think I'm someone who votes strategically. I don't look at voting as something that is emotional. It is not a place to have your voice primaries are a place to have your voice heard in terms of protest. If you want to protest in a general, I don't think that's overall helpful. But that's my job and other people's job to convince you in a good manner, not to say you're evil if you don't vote for who we said you should vote for.
Well, can you compare that to Joe Biden right now over Donald Trump, maybe, and why it was a better move? Because I think it was. I didn't vote for Donald Trump. I voted for Gloria La Riva, right? Third party this time. I'm in California. It was a lot easier for me to do that as opposed to being in Florida in a swing state, whatnot, where I voted for Hillary Clinton. But if I can go back and change that vote, I would go back and change it to Jill Stein. If I can go back in time, I really would. Because to me, Hillary Clinton is nothing more than George Bush, but she's pro-choice. You know what I'm saying? She is awful when it comes to foreign policy. Joe Biden, worse than Donald Trump when it comes to foreign policy. Joe Biden took $16 million from big tech, where Donald Trump took less than $1 million. So the merging of big tech, which is the actual definition of fascism, Matt, which is when the corporations merge with the state. And that's
you're talking about people who work for these companies. That's people who you're talking about we should be uniting with, workers. I mean, I think that's a really underhanded sort of way to look at that. I mean, the employees of these various big tech companies should technically be people. I mean, a lot of them are unionizing right now or fighting for unions. A lot of an Uber driver or a Lyft driver could be considered someone working for a big tech company. You know
what I mean. I'm talking about the Mark Zuckerbergs. No, come on. I'm talking about the guys who actually make the choices. An Uber driver is not going to make a decision about what the Uber app does. Somebody who works for Google is not going to make a choice for what Pachai does, or somebody who works for Twitter is not going to make a choice what Jack Dorsey does. We know that, Matt. I'm not trying to conflate that issue.
You're talking about the fundraising, though, who donated to who, and that's where that comes from. Mark Zuckerberg wouldn't be able to give any more than anybody else in those fundraising numbers. So,
Well, I beg to differ, but I mean, and I can show you proof of where what Mark Zuckerberg has done and where his funding has gone. But either way,
honestly, it wouldn't surprise me.
The majority of money given by big tech wasn't from employees; it was from presidents and people who run big tech. We know this. I mean, that's just something, that's like saying a guy who builds missiles gave money from Northrop Grumman to Joe Biden. That's not true. It's the heads of these companies that donate the majority of money. But that's beside the point. If you would like to explain to me how that lesser of two evil is, and we have to wrap it up quickly because we got about 8 minutes before Fee's got to get in here. How voting for the lesser of two evils, what you think of the lesser of two evils, actually works, as opposed to what I think.
Right. I mean, so you did it yourself. You voted for the lesser of two evils. You say you should go back in time and not do it anymore. But the fact of the matter is that doesn't matter because you voted for Hillary Clinton. And at the time, you made a decision. You voted strategically. You even said it. You said you lived in Florida, it was a swing state, and you voted for the lesser of two evils.
But I don't believe she was the lesser of two evils today. I don't believe that the Democratic Party is the lesser of two evils. I believe they are both equally evil with just different colors.
Okay, well, today is different. I mean, anyone could look back and say that, but at the time, you thought she was the lesser of two evils. Otherwise, you're telling me you voted for more evil if you knew that at the time. You
got me there, brother. Fine. But still, I'm asking if that decision still holds weight today.
Well, the Jimmy Dore Sam Cedar interview the debate you're talking about, it's the last time Jimmy Dore ever had the nerve to talk to Sam Cedar. And honestly, it all is because of one simple issue, and it's quite clear why Dore has never engaged with Cedar again. It's because Jimmy Dore in that debate, and it's honestly the one issue that really matters here. If you want any sort of leftist, progressive, whatever policy pushed forward, this is where it matters, and it's the Supreme Court. And in that debate, Jimmy Dore said to Sam Cedar that the idea that Donald Trump would get to pick his exact number, 3 Supreme Court justices. I don't remember exactly what he said, but it was something equivalent to when pigs fly. Lo and behold, and Cedar said to him, "You're really pushing it, man. Like, is it likely to happen? Sure, of course. But can it happen? Is it a possibility worrisome enough to vote a certain way? Absolutely."
What Democratic leftist Supreme Court judge has really done anything for the people right now and voted in favor of the people right now?
Oh, Justice Sotomayor is a great justice. She has had some great decisions. You should read some of her dissents. She really is. I mean, the idea that RBG got all this heralding and celebration. The real progressive on the Supreme Court is and has always been since she's been on it, Justice Sotomayor. But the idea that if you just look at any Supreme Court decision, oftentimes though it is a party line sort of vote where you have all the liberal Supreme Court justices voting one way and all the conservative Supreme Court justices voting the other. I mean, we will likely never have the leftist policies that we want in this country due to Donald Trump getting to pick his 3 Supreme Court justices.
See, you have no evidence to show that we've got any games with any leftists. What policy did we gain through Barack Obama and Bill Clinton? What today has helped out working class people what Barack Obama and Bill Clinton have done? Because right now we have 80% of people living paycheck to paycheck, and just like we said, when you have a Barack Obama in office, the fact that he's Team Blue, you don't even pay attention to the drone warfare and everything he is doing, the way he was expanding the empire. You kind of go to sleep on it and we have brunch. So what policy, what working class policy, because I don't know of any working class policy that any Democrat has brought us, the lesser of two evils, what you guys would say, since before Jimmy Carter.
Well, I mean, the idea, first of all, you're totally misrepresenting me.
I don't mean to. I'm sorry. So please correct me.
Back in the Obama years, plenty of Democratic establishment types called me and the majority report at the time Obama bots, because we were very strong on Obama, specifically on his wars overseas and his use of drones and his killing of a 16-year-old American citizen, Anwar al-Awlaki's 16-year-old son. All because the idea that they believed that maybe Anwar al-Awlaki was with his son at the time, so they drone strike them. They felt like that was fine to do. Kill a 16-year-old American citizen. No way, shape, or form have I ever forgiven.
Well, I was just asking you to point out what policies, by saying, okay, I got to vote for Obama over the Republican or Biden over Trump, have really helped out the left or helped out working class people. I mean, I'm not trying to misrepresent you. I just don't know of them. And like I said, because of Obama, militarism by the police increased by 2,400%. He took all that military-grade weapon. He brought it home. He expanded the wars overseas, especially the Middle East. He went to drone attacks instead of, boots on the ground, which killed a lot more innocent people. You know what I'm saying? And he also kind of, went after whistleblowers more than any other president ever before. So, I mean, I just like to know, like, where we had some gains. If you can point out to me a gain that's like, something, Matt, that's a gain, and we should at least acknowledge that, then so be it. But I can't think of any.
Oh, I've said many times before that the Obama legacy is, quite frankly, a joke, unfortunately, due to the fact that so many of his crowning achievements, which shows how weak they were, essentially fell apart due to decisions made during the Trump administration. The Iran deal was his crowning foreign policy achievement. I thought it was a great move from Obama, one of his few, probably the only foreign policy achievement in his administration, and it's one that he faced a lot of blowback from his own party, and he was right on that. But it shows just how short-lasting that legacy lived due to the fact that it was dismantled under the Trump administration. I'm sure many of your followers and subscribers and listeners will disagree with me, but at the end of the day, the crowning Obama achievement will frankly be Obamacare. And I'm a heavy critic of Obamacare. You won't get a lot of positive things from me from talking about Obamacare. However, there were a number of things that truly did make it worthwhile when you compare it to what we had previously. 30 million plus people who were previously uninsured were insured thanks to Obamacare. People under the age of 26 were able to continue to be insured when previously they would be going uninsured the second they became independent from their parents. Yep. You also had the removal of pre-existing conditions in terms of whether an insurance company could turn somebody down. Obviously, it did not go anywhere near far enough. Yeah. It is a sham compared to what we could have. We should have Medicare for all, real Medicare for all, a single payer system where no one has to worry about affordability whatsoever. They should be able to, they should know they have healthcare, period. Yeah. But when compared to what we had before Obamacare, it is an improvement.
Well, I'm going to disagree with you immensely. I think that the fact that 50% of people of color's wealth was lost in the 2008 crash, which Obama was at the head of, giving money to the banks, really put the nail in coffin. We're talking about generational wealth. Like I said, I think he did more damage than good, but I think this is a fascinating conversation, and we have to wrap it up now because we have somebody else who wants to get to you, buddy, and I don't want to wear you out completely. Yeah. Matt, I thank you so much for coming on the show. We're going to go to a quick commercial break, and thank you for the spirited debate. I think we were able to pull this off without the first part, that is. We were able to pull it out without a moderator, which is great, which can show you that two adults can get in the room when they have different opinions and work it out. Even though I disagree with what our ideologies are, we can maybe hash this out on another time and get further into it, brother.
I wish we could get further into it because I would love to know what a McCain or a Romney would have done that would have made it better. I mean, Obama certainly sucked, but those were our choices.
My personal choice is not to vote for either one of them, is to start looking outside the two-party duopoly. Right. And I understand that would be a whole nother debate of like strategic, what you think making that move is necessary to mitigate damages versus, well, we already had too much damage. If we don't go on to another avenue, we'll be lost forever. And I understand that's a debate for another time, brother. So we will get to it.
All right, it's cool.
Yeah. Matt, thank you so much. We're going to go to a quick commercial break, ladies and gentlemen. Let me try one more time. Matt Bender?
Binder.
Jesus Christ. Matt Bender, Pasta Jardula, the first half of the debate. Fiorella's coming out of the bullpen to close it out for the last three innings with Matt. We'll see you in a second, ladies. Just hold on, ladies and gentlemen. Hold on.
All right, guys, we are back, and now it's my turn to have this spirited conversation with Matt Binder, who Pasta couldn't get his name right, which happens often. You know, I always make fun of Pasta for that. Good sport. But thank you for being here and having this conversation. I think I told you. Great. I told you off air. I'm not Pasta. I get a little bit more, I don't know, more fiery, I would say, than Pasta. So it's going to be a little bit different, but I hope we can still maintain some form of respect across the board. I'm going to
bring it. Let's do this.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm going to start off by responding to you and doing like what Pasta did in the beginning, but I'm going to start off by responding to this smear that I am not for Medicare for all. I have been fighting for Medicare for all for the last 5 years. The screenshot that is being posted in my response to Sky Daddy talking about I don't support the government doing this is in response to our current government structure under this capitalist system, which I'm going to disagree with Pasta. Imperialism is the highest form of capitalism, and I agree with you that we must abolish capitalism in order to move forward. However, I think what Pasta was trying to get to was that currently we are experiencing an increasingly fascistic state with increasing crypto-fascism from the surveillance state. We are obviously in economic despair. The working class is big. The predator class is small. However, we haven't seen any gains or any help from politicians in power, which brings me to our whole debate, which for us is going to be Medicare for all in the squad, right? How do you perceive Medicare for all? For me, I consider Medicare for all a compromise. As a leftist, and I consider myself an anarcho-communist, I don't like labels, but if I had to label myself, that's what it would be. I believe that everybody deserves healthcare for all. Healthcare is a human right. But I do not trust the current government structure to implement that cohesively. Why? Well, because we are an empire. We go around the world overthrowing regimes. We go around the world interfering in elections. And we have big pharma and we have corrupt politicians. I don't believe in reform. I believe reform is what faux leftists and faux socialists push. And I largely believe that the left has been co-opted by these faux progressives. And we can talk about that in specifics. I believe this mimics very much of what was happening during the Russian Revolution. And Lenin spoke a lot about this. And I can point out some examples about that as such. But I believe, for me as a leftist, Medicare for all is a compromise because it will still rely on the current government structure. However, what I said there that people left out was that even though I don't trust this government to fully implement Medicare for all in the universal healthcare form that it should be, that doesn't mean that I don't support it, because I'd rather have people get their insulin. I'd rather have people not be in medical debt and not die than everything else. I'm simply pointing out to you the counter argument is that our government is extremely corrupt and is extremely, I don't trust it to really do what needs to be done because we the people are not in power. And I believe there is no reform to the current system except through revolution, and a real revolution, not the faux revolution we were led astray. So I just wanted you to respond to those points.
I gotta say, I don't know where this debate's gonna go up to the revolution part. Quite frankly, I think I didn't hear you say you believed in capitalism, like Pasta mentioned. I didn't hear you say you were a libertarian, like Pasta mentioned. I didn't hear you say, it seems like being an anarcho-communist, you'd be right up against far right-wing extremism and the ANCAPs. Who are completely opposed to everything that you seem to stand for. So I'm on board. If that was you being misconstrued about Medicare for all, then you laid it straight right now. And I don't think there's anywhere for us to argue, except then you brought up the revolution. I mean, are you a incrementalist? Of course not, right?
Obviously not. Yeah.
Obviously not. I don't know though how someone can. I mean, if you're saying that you're fine with all these things happening, and then eventually the goal is the revolution, I mean, fine, that's a little bit different. But if you're saying that this can't be implemented at all until the revolution, then I mean, that seems like it is peak incrementalism, because I hate to say it, I was teenage anarchist Matt Binder would be very upset with me, but lo and behold, bring up the Against Me song Teenage Anarchist, and that's who I am today. I don't think that the revolution, as we were told it could happen, is something that's anywhere in our future, near or otherwise, unfortunately. And so to me, the ultimate incrementalism would say that we can't do reform until the revolution, because you don't trust the reform, any reform.
Right. So it's not that we can't, it's not that there won't be crumbs that you are given. It's that inherently those crumbs that you are given are there to pacify any sort of revolution. And that's where I believe the squad comes in. That's where I believe the progressives and a large amount of the DSA leadership. I will separate the members from the leadership. I think the leadership is often more corrupt. Obviously, no group is monolithic, so I'm not going to generalize for the whole thing. However, I believe what you're stating is incrementalism, because every time you give in to crumbs, every time you validate any symbolic gesture from members of Congress that don't inherently and tangibly help the working class, you are literally perpetuating that very system which you supposedly want to get rid of. And I think we're hitting that tipping point right now. And you're right. Maybe a true revolution where, we establish a dictatorship of the proletariat, or whatever that means to you, depending on your belief, won't happen. This utopian idea, the way the world views it as utopian, I don't think it's utopian. I think it's achievable. But that whole idea, maybe we won't get there, but I believe the fight begins here. And as long as we have the equivalent to the faux socialist of Lenin's time, continuously preventing us from real revolution by giving us symbolic crumbs and telling us that we need to accept what we have and take it, when we know they can do more. And if they're not doing more, if the path then isn't working, we have tried electing members of Congress. We have tried and seen what happens to them. Now, here you disagree with me. Members of the squad haven't worked to their full potential. They haven't worked for the working class. We obviously disagree on that, but I haven't seen any tangible gains for the working class, especially a working class that largely donated to members of the squad to fight for Medicare for all, to fight for the $15 minimum wage, which was doable at one point, the $15 minimum wage, and then of course it turned into not being doable. But let me regress back to, how do we achieve something like Medicare for all? How did other countries achieve largely single-payer systems? In Canada, in the beginning, what these countries did is that they created their own little mini, system of mutual aid, similar to when the Black Panther Party created the freedom schools and had healthcare for their own people. That was happening. That was a ground up development. It didn't come from politicians at first. Nothing comes from the top. Nothing comes from politicians. Things must come from the working class. And so that is my whole point. In order to get something like Medicare for all, we are going to have to stand behind direct actions like Force the Vote, like March for Medicare for All, these actions that were scoffed arrogantly so by people on your side of the corner, the Sam Cedars and you guys who thought, oh, this was largely performative. Well, it wasn't performative for AOC to vote on impeachment, which was extremely performative because we got nothing out of it. It wasn't symbolic or performative for her to do this whole sit out with Cori Bush, that we can talk about how really little that was and how it was extremely theatrical because afterwards they were asking for fundraising. So we can talk about that. But for me, it's direct action, and it's time for that, because electoralism in a system that is obviously rigged, it's functioning as it should for the predator class, it's rigged for us, isn't going to achieve anything. Now is the time to go nuclear. Now is the time to push forward and to make these politicians uncomfortable. They are our public servants. They work for us. Why is it that I have to make acquisitions to them?
Well, I would say I agree with a lot of what you said. I mean, I am someone who comes from an activist background. I got into politics strongly in my youth due to listening to political punk music, which brought up strong leftist ideologies, even anarchism. And then 9/11, being a lifelong New Yorker, 9/11 affected my political viewpoint, grew up in the anti-war scene, was down there at Occupy Wall Street covering it. I mean, I completely believe in direct action. In fact, I think you might be conflating my views with some other people who you might find to be on my side, quote unquote. I wasn't anti-forced to vote. I was realistic as to what forced to vote was. And that is, it was just one of many possible strategies to push politicians to get possibly a sort of, get them to take a stand on a specific position. But at the end of the day, that's really all it was going to be. The idea that it seems like some people believe that forced to vote would have gotten them Medicare for all. Now, I'm not saying that's what you believe. I don't know if that's what you believe. Forced to vote would have even Jimmy Dore, who pushed forced to vote and created that whole movement around this one specific strategy, was pretty clear that the goal of forced to vote wasn't the end. The end goal wasn't going to result in Medicare for all, because that was simply unattainable at this juncture.
No, but, just really quick, I just want to interject really quick. Speaker Pelosi and all of Congress would have had to say, no, I do not support healthcare for all during a fucking pandemic. They would have had to put that on the books. Now, I know that AOC has made accusations that, we already know who the sponsor was. That doesn't apply, I guess, when it's something that they're willing to fight on. And by the way, Jimmy Dore didn't start forced to vote. That came from DSA, and that came from DSA's own 2019 little go-to manual where they were talking about forced to vote. It talked about HR 1384 and Medicare for all, and how a floor vote in the House would force representatives to finally reveal whether they're on the side of healthcare profiteers or the working class. That's straight from the DSA playbook. Why that was somehow unacceptable, maybe it wasn't you, but it was largely coming from that part of the TYT and Sam Cedar contingent that they didn't like Jimmy Dore and they didn't like his circle of friends, so they chose to ignore it and belittle it. Maybe had somebody that they liked proposed it, the reaction would have been different. And that's what it is to me. There's this elitism coming from a certain group of people where they believe that they are the most socialist and that they know the best and that they read all this theory. And reading theory isn't bad. It's a good thing. But when you come at a working class population and you mock somebody like Jimmy Dore because, he's a comedian and he talks about not being an intellectual and all this stuff, you're mocking the working class. He represents the anger of the working class. And I'm not here to just talk about him, but I am telling you that's the sentiment. That's how it comes off, as a very arrogant and elitist mindset, a very bourgeois type of leftism that is very, very just myopic to working class struggles. And I will tell you personally, when covering on the ground, covering the unhoused crisis here in LA, which is obviously, as you know, very dire, and covering the lack of respect to the people from police, because I mean, I'm anti-cop, obviously, but for me, it's more than that. It's the police representing they're the minions, the stormtroopers to the state agencies. And it's those people I'm fighting. It's those people that we have to hold to account. So if we can't expose the corruption within our system, and if we can't talk to people and get on their level and say, you know what, guess what, maybe talking about bureaucracies and all of these things isn't important to somebody that's about to get evicted. Maybe we need to understand what's important to them and understand that we need to amplify those voices of the working class and not mock people for being angry, because if you're not angry, you're not paying attention. I mean, that was classic Bernie 2015, 2016, right?
Right. I mean, you put a lot there for me to unpack, so let me try to get to it all. First, the thing that sticks out is the idea that Jimmy Dore somehow is reflective of the working class. I mean, I'm not gonna, really, but the idea that a multi-millionaire entertainer is somehow the voice of the working class. I never was against forced to vote because it was a Jimmy Dore thing. And yes, it was a Jimmy Dore thing because let's be frank, the Convo Couch and your audience and the forced to vote people who consistently call the DSA some sort of establishment, like ring of the Democratic Party, was not following the DSA's forced to vote strategy. DSA put out forced to vote as one of many possible direct actions. They, as far as I know, still believed in that as one of many possible direct actions. I believe their criticism of it, and where my criticism of it align, is that it seems like you guys, and when I say you guys, I mean the forced to vote supporters, created an entire cult-like movement specifically focused on just this one strategy. And for someone who espouses so much positivity about direct action, which I totally agree with, you know, or you should know, that one of the most important things with direct action is diversity of action, and that there should be an array of things on the table, spanning whether we're talking politically to on, like talking about how to force our elected officials, like forced to vote, to on the ground action, to specifically working with progressives in Congress or staff members who are open to discussing an array of different things to try to get past policy. But this forced to vote thing, which this version of it was brought about by Jimmy Dore, which did come off as very personal for Jimmy in terms of him being upset that certain people, AOC, for example, wouldn't go on his show. That forced to vote is where I sort of had a problem. That whole movement around Jimmy Dore's version of forced to vote. Forced to vote as a strategy, I think it should be on the table. It's certainly something that I agree with a whole bunch of other direct actions working together is something that would put immense political pressure on certain members of Congress. Would it equal Medicare for all at this point in time? I don't think so, unfortunately. Really, and this is even what the main people who were supporting this version of forced to vote, the Jimmy Dore version of forced to vote, even they were coming out and saying this. They wanted to get, the purpose of forced to vote this time around was getting people to put their vote down on paper so we know who really supports Medicare for all.
Right.
Now, here's the problem with that, though. We know who really supports Medicare for all. We know. We know. And if you
don't know, not really, because a lot of the votes are made for like theatrically when there's nothing to gain. But during a pandemic, that would have been the Congress, and people would have been watching, denying the American people health care for all. That is a point that is largely ignored by your contingent of the left. And like, I'm not going to spend time on the whole Jimmy Dore thing, but in LA, a shack is $1 million. A shack. So if we're going to bring up Jimmy Dore's house, we can go back to how Bernie Sanders was smeared for having 3 houses. That is like a goalpost shift. That is completely like whatever. Like that doesn't mean anything. What I mean when I say he's a representative of the anger of the working class is that his audience is largely working class. I've been to his shows. I've been there. I've seen it. Like the audience is largely working class because he talks about these class issues and comes from a working class background. Like that is the reality. That's a separate point.
I can say this is all just from what your own viewpoint is, obviously. I mean, I could tell you right now, working at the Majority Report for the years I worked there, our viewership was all working class too. But, you guys like to say that show and all its listeners are all just, bourgeoisie liberals or something like that. It doesn't make any sense, to be quite frank. So I don't really know. We don't have any data behind who makes up what. I can tell you, though, that I would never say that Sam Cedar, who also comes from a comedic background, is the voice of the working class. I mean, in fact, the idea that someone who is in that position would be the sort of face of the working class, even Sam would tell you that's ridiculous. So I wouldn't call either of these these people faces of the working class, represented the working class at all. At the end of the day, they both made a good amount of money from when compared to blue collar work that isn't all that hard comparatively, to be quite frank. Same with me and you guys. To be honest, I wouldn't say I'm the face of the working class, and I'm sure you would agree you aren't either.
Oh, I'm working class, 100% working class. Yeah, I don't make a lot of money at all. Yeah.
Oh, of course, yes, but you wouldn't say that you're the face of the working class.
No, I mean, I don't think he's the face in terms of literally the face. I think he represents a lot of the interest of the working class, which is why he's popular, and which is why it's very resounding. The issue-based things that are discussed. Like, I don't want to spend time discussing him, but I just wanted to point out something regarding the squad. What tangible moves have they made for us, for the working class in general? Okay, for the working class, let's just say that. 1, 2, what is your method of attaining Medicare for all? Did you just give up on Medicare for all, or do you believe there's a different method to attaining Medicare for all?
Oh, no, I think Medicare for all is obviously the policy goal. Quite frankly, unfortunately, right now, it's just not obtainable. Like, I'm living in reality. I know it's unfortunate to a certain audience on the left, but the reality is that right now we are not going to get Medicare for all.
So you're okay with crumbs? You're okay with
No. I'm just living in the real world, and the way we obtain Medicare for all is by getting more progressives into office.
Okay. What if I told you we don't have time? What if I told you we have literally like 10 years? What was your solution?
I mean, we literally have 10 years. Where do you get this number from? I mean,
I'm proposing something to you.
There's people who have less than 10. There's people who don't have. There's people whose time is up. I mean, the United States government surely has blood on its hands from its medical health insurance system. I mean, it's the reality. I'm not happy with it.
But why isn't it attainable now? Can I ask you why?
Because we don't have the elected officials in office who can make it happen.
Oh, really? So during the Obama administration, the ACA had only 40 co-sponsors. Nancy Pelosi has gone out there and said, oh, we don't have the co-sponsors yet. But she has also said, even though my district largely supports Medicare for all, I don't support it because I believe the path is through the ACA. 30 years ago, almost, like 25 years ago, Nancy Pelosi was supporting universal health care. What changed? Obviously, the fact that she's taking money from the pharmaceutical industry and insurance companies. Obviously, the fact that maybe she never actually intended to do that. AOC now comes with a 30-year plan for Medicare for all. So you're saying that we have to wait for that because you're living in reality. For me, reality is we fucking need healthcare for all because people are literally dying. 86 people per day because we don't have healthcare. And it's very elitist to me to hear from people that I'm living in reality where we're not going to get it. And we're not going to get it because we don't have the votes. Well, we're never going to have the votes because we have way more votes, like 150 something votes than the ACA had, okay? Co-sponsors, I'm sorry. We had 156 something co-sponsors. The ACA had 40 co-sponsors. And they're always going to give you an excuse. Electorally, we might not get it. Direct action-wise, through marches for Medicare for all and your support and the uniting the left and uniting the working class, we can literally demand, build a movement to demand it and not stop until we fucking get it. And that is where we're at.
I agree that the movement building should go on stronger than ever. I'm not against that at all. In fact, I supported the March for Medicare for All. I had my criticisms of some of the things that happened around it, but you will not find a single video of me telling people not to support it or attacking anyone who was involved with it. In fact, other than yourself due to that Medicare for All tweet, which you've come out and you've amended with more information. But I, in fact, told people that they should look it up and they should go to the site and find one nearby them and attend if that's what they want to do. If that was something that seemed like was a good organizing principle for them, they should take part in that. I'm not against organizing for it at all. But the idea that we would attack our closest progressive allies in Congress who can actually help make it happen seems counterproductive. I mean, you bring up the ACA, but the fact is during the Obama years, the Democrats had the votes in the Senate. We don't have the votes in the Senate now. In fact,
we don't, because the squad doesn't do anything to attain them.
The squad's not in the Senate. There's 50 Democrats, 50
in
Republicans.
In the House.
That doesn't.
There's 100 progressives in the progressive.
That doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It'll die in the Senate. Period. Like that again. I'm living in reality here.
That's
I want
electoralism,
Medicare for all
though.
Just as much. But that's how we get Medicare for all.
No, it's not electoralism first and then direct action. It's direct action driving the push for politicians.
Right. And we need to obviously make that direct action even stronger. But we had the strongest case for Medicare for all with Bernie 2016, Bernie 2020. And both times we lost. The candidate who opposed Medicare for all.
The election, they stole the election from Bernie Sanders.
We lost the election. You can say it however you want.
On that,
I'm not going to argue.
But yeah.
It doesn't matter. The point is the people did not vote for the Medicare for all candidate. We have the raw votes. You can say that the Democratic Party put their fingers on the scale, which I believe they did.
70% of Americans support Medicare for all. You really believe that the people did not vote for Bernie Sanders?
But people, we just talked about this with Pasta though, where people across this country just do not have. They don't live in the same political bubble we do.
Of course not.
So you will find people who say, I support Medicare for all because, I think it sounds good, but I don't like Bernie Sanders. I'm voting for Joe Biden, and whatever Joe Biden says, that's what we're going with because I trust Joe Biden. I'll guarantee you that there are more people like that than you think. Obviously, we know because Joe Biden won.
Did you canvass for Bernie, by the way?
Did I canvass for Bernie? I did in New York. I did in New York.
So the vast majority of
Unfortunately, it was too late in New York by the time it came around. But before it became obvious that I went out and got signatures to get him on the ballot. And in 2016, when it still was a competitive race, I did do door knocking and trying to get people out to the vote in New York. Yes.
Yeah, I was just going to say the vast majority of people I spoke to, even if they weren't for Bernie, were for healthcare for all in some form or fashion. Even Republicans, when explained to it with numbers and details, all of that, like they were like, okay, well, I'm not against it. In fact, they hated more Joe Biden and Hillary Clinton than they did Bernie Sanders. And that is something that often the left fails in their exclusion of the entire working class, in their attempt to label every single person as a racist. Like that is part of it.
But I mean, clearly, we're also in our own political bubbles.
Of course.
I mean, clearly, if you go down to South Carolina and talk to Black Democrats in South Carolina, they don't feel that way. I mean, we know, being that they voted overwhelmingly for Joe Biden and barely considered Bernie twice, 2016 and 2020. I mean, there are certainly failures within the Bernie Sanders campaign that caused that.
Of course, there were failures.
But of course, but I mean, those failures don't amount to the.
Okay. So the DNC literally admitted
Bernie Sanders took
that they could pick any candidate. They could go back into a room and pick any candidate that they wanted. They literally admitted that in a court of law.
Right,
so
right.
for you to still think that we have a fair election in this system is, I think, that's where our disagreement lies, because you believe we still have democracy. If I'm not wrong, you believe like our elections are fair, that generally, your vote matters, all that shit. Like, no, I'm not there with you.
Primaries are not the same as a general election. The parties run the primaries.
Okay, yes, the parties run the primaries, but then in the general, it's still politicians in control. It's still the system in control.
I mean, Bernie Sanders could run as a third-party candidate if he wants. No one's stopping him.
No, we don't have we don't have a fair shake in the system. I'm for third parties, but none of these third parties are addressing election reform at all in any way, shape, or form. So I'm not supporting third-party candidates. I'm not supporting anybody at this point, because none of these people are addressing the fact that we don't live in a democracy. Either we live in an oligarchy, and you talk about what Bernie Sanders says. We live in an oligarchy. 2015 Bernie Sanders, he would talk about the oligarchy. You would talk about how corrupt the Democratic establishment is, and how they're pretty much, he would say, it's one big aisle, he would say in 1980 something. Like, he would always talk about that. Okay, that's what I'm talking about. Once you recognize we don't live in a democracy, and that your vote is contingent upon which candidate the establishment prefers, and which clown is going to go around and do theater and pretend that they're in charge. And once you realize that they're state agencies, and this is where we view power different, because to me, the state agencies, the military industrial complex, are those in power, and they hold so much more. They wield so much more power than anybody else. You and I and any Trump supporter or any shitlib or anybody of any of these people. That's the thing. For me, you talk about things from, well, we need more progressives, and if we have 100 Nina Turners and 100 Cori Bushes, we're going to be able to get there. And I'm telling you that based on their actions, they are the replacement for the old guard. They're going to act the same way, and we are going to be no better off, in fact, worse, unless we use direct action to force their hand. And that is the mark of a true leftist. Like, incrementalism is a liberal tactic. Incrementalism is waiting for politicians to do something for you instead of demanding it.
Millions of people are going to get to stay in their homes due to what you earlier called Cori Bush's theatrics. I mean, she did something. She put her money where her mouth is, and she took action. And I mean, even that's being like poo-pooed by you guys. Like, I don't know what else to say. Like, if you can't find your allies in Congress, or if you're unhappy with them, get more progressive candidates in Congress, like Nina Turner, who apparently a lot of you guys opposed.
We didn't oppose. We just didn't think we thought she turned on the people. Nobody ever spoke out against her. Well, now you'll never get to know, because I'm sure. Are you blaming people on the left? No. Okay. She lost for a number of reasons, but I'm sure there are people who might have voted, not enough maybe to change the election, but I'm sure there are people who on the left who decided not to vote for her due to what they were hearing. I mean, is it what they were hearing, or is it their conditions? I mean, Nina Turner did nothing, in my point of view, to make anyone question her tenacity, to be quite frank. She said you will be disappointed, and supported the squad when they refused to actually support any direct action. She did. This is what I think you pointed out when I said I did something like she did a whole event with AOC the same day. Neither of them as much as mentioned the March for Medicare for All, meaning that they're not paying attention to what the people are doing, the reality people are living. So how is that going to reflect when they hold power? The time to hold politicians to account is before they get into office, not after. The March for Medicare for All was immaterial to getting Nina Turner elected. I mean, it was the weekend, literally days. I think it was actually a week before her election, and she needed to get out the vote. She needed to actually talk to people within her district. She needed to get people out in Cleveland to knock on doors, to commit to voting for her. AOC went down there specifically for that. I mean, the March for Medicare for All was just a non-issue. I mean, this is the thing. Like, she campaigned on that. Why is it a non-issue? She campaigned on Medicare for All. Right. Not a march that was set up by a bunch of people that you can't account for. You don't know who they are, what they're doing. That's the point of a decentralized movement. You've already seen a number of things. This wasn't decentralized. They were legitimate, actual organizers. That was the problem. They were main people. Then it wasn't decentralized. It was decentralized. That's the problem. When you have something decentralized, there's always co-option in movements. That's an age-old theory. There was a number of main organizers, and they basically dropped the ball in terms of certain things to make sure that this went on with it. And that's fine. Everyone makes mistakes. In your opinion, yeah. When everyone makes, I mean, there was literally a campaign to have Matthew Heimbach, a neo-Nazi. That was literally an infiltration done on purpose. Yes, from a Democrat. There's somebody writing an article about I heard differently than it being a Democrat. Okay, well, let's say that red-brown alliance with the Boogaloo Boys isn't working out so much. Nobody's trying to have a red-brown alliance, and that is a fallacy. Like that. There's a difference between talking to a poor working class. A person, which Bernie did in 2016, he went into the South and spoke to working class people and convinced a lot of Republicans to vote for him. This is why in 2016, West Virginia went to Bernie Sanders. And then in the general, it went to Donald Trump, because he was able to reach the working class through that by not calling everybody a racist. And in 2016, Bernie would talk about that. Of course, largely after that, his campaign was co-opted by people that were largely pro-centrist, and you saw what happened. Well, I mean, West Virginia came out hardcore for Biden, so it seems like, unfortunately, that was more of an which means that was more likely an anti-Hillary vote. I mean, it's quite clear that Biden spoke to the normie
working class type blue collar workers in certain states, being that they came out and voted for him. I mean, it's just there. Unfortunately, I know it bothers you that that's the case, but that's just what the data shows. I'm no fan of Biden. I think they were misled to vote for him, thinking that that's who he was. But he's created this sort of persona throughout his entire career that he's, good old Joe Biden from PA, from Delaware, and they think he's some working class icon in their mind, and he's sold that vision of him quite well over the years. Unfortunate for us, but I mean, the idea that not supporting a specific organization's event means that you're not for a specific policy when the organization is so new and you can't account for it and you don't know who's running it.
It's Medicare for all, period.
But I mean, yeah, it's Medicare for all, but you don't know who's running this march. And again, it was completely a non-event. It was a non-event for people in Cleveland, District 11 in Ohio.
2 hours.
She doesn't need people driving out 2 hours. She needs people there to get her into office. So we have another person in office to help make Medicare for all happen. I mean, our marches mean nothing if we don't have the politicians in office who will support what we're marching for. Like, this is what I don't understand when it gets down to it. We're going all over the place. And this is what I don't understand. How do we get Medicare for all to happen without any allies in Congress? Like, you're not putting forth any strategy to get these people on our side. You're not putting forth any strategy to get people who you think can get into Congress, who will support Medicare for all where they need to be. There is no strategy from your side to make Medicare for all happen.
Electoralism.
What is it?
That's what you don't understand.
How do you do it? How do you do it?
Because your strategy is to consider people who are allied. Again, I ask you again before I answer. Let me answer this question: what has AOC and the squad tangibly done to better the conditions of the working class?
Well, they haven't been they haven't been in power at all. They're about 6, 7 of them, maybe 8.
Okay.
In Congress right now, and they're all in the House.
Okay.
So there's no support in the Senate. It is really about pushing the Overton window. Like, that's really all it is that they can do right now. And they've done a phenomenal job based on your own data that shows how many people support Medicare for all in this country. That's not based upon nothing.
People have supported that for a while. I mean, Nancy Pelosi was talking
the numbers.
About it.
We've seen that, and that's when it wasn't all that popular at all. Hillary Clinton was talking about it forever ago too, and she was in a position to make it happen. The problem is it wasn't politically viable then because it wasn't popular then. If we had this sort of groundswell back when Hillary Clinton was for it. I mean, that's actually I was once a one-issue voter. Back in the day, in 2008, I actually voted for Hillary Clinton in the primary over Barack Obama in 2008 for one reason and one reason only. And that's because she was the only option who was out there talking about universal health care.
Okay.
And that was my one issue. And unfortunately, now we're here. It wasn't viable when people like Pelosi and Hillary were talking it up. They changed due to various reasons we've just discussed. Mm-hmm. And now the people are there. Unfortunately, the politicians aren't. So I'm saying we get politicians who are now there for us into office, and we get them to back us, and together we put an immense pressure on Congress as a whole with their help, because without them, we have nobody in Congress who can help make this happen. No one who can talk to people, no one who can cut whatever sort of deals need to be made to make it happen, because that's always going to happen. It happened all the way back with FDR and the New Deal, and everyone knows that Social Security is basically why people are not, older people when they reach a certain age aren't dying in the streets of poverty like they did back when. I'm not saying they're well off and they're doing good, but they're not dying in the streets of poverty like they were back in the days before the before the FDR's New Deal. But people like AOC have pushed that window to the point where now the people are there. And now we have to now sort of reverse engineer it now. We need to get the politicians there now.
All right. So my issue with push the overtone window is, like, for who? For the liberals, for the liberal class, that's it. Like, politics is largely, people are apathetic because they don't believe their vote counts. One, they're right. Two, because they don't believe, like, politicians care. They're also right. And the pushing the overtone window doesn't feed people. It doesn't house people. It doesn't pay their rent. It's not a tangible gain that we have seen. And there may be a few of them, right? There's a few of them. There's 100 people in the progressive caucus that people consider progressive, like Rokfin, right? I've
never been a fan of Rokfin. I always saw him as someone who is way too into the pocket of basically Silicon Valley. And a lot of people on the left are sort of blinded to that because he's good on a number of other issues. But actually, when it comes down to it, he really isn't. Is he a good ally? I would say he's an ally. I would say he's not one of the progressives or leftists in Congress we can count on. I also looked at Tulsi Gabbard as an ally on certain issues. I never would have voted for her as a presidential candidate. But on certain issues, I saw that we can ally with her. I mean, unfortunately, I think she went further and further right as time went on. But it is what it is. I mean, she certainly was not.
Like Bernie's gone to the right. He's gone to the right as a centrist. She's definitely, played politics. Both of them had their issues.
I mean, she's
all
hanging
politicians.
out with.
They're all politicians.
To me, there's a little bit of a difference than Bernie doing what he needs to do to make sure he was the chairman of the budget committee so he could push forward some of the things that he thinks he can actually get through with the Biden administration that are actually progressive. He's unfortunately having to play the game of politics, but that's what you sort of want your
he's
Congress
weak on
people
foreign
to
policy
do, though.
and civil liberties, so which is a huge issue for a lot of us.
He's still probably, I mean, not probably, he's easily one of the most progressives even on foreign policy.
Of course he is.
That's
how low the bar is.
Exactly, but Tulsi, which if I'm not mistaken, you guys were supporters of at one point, right?
I like Tulsi Gabbard. I voted for Bernie Sanders both times.
I mean, talk about right-wing foreign policy. I mean, buddies with Modi. This is someone who.
I'm not here to
God,
discuss.
this is
the Modi
the truth,
situation.
This is the truth, though.
Obama, Kamala, everybody that's right now in office has been buddies with Modi. Like that's irrelevant to me. Foreign policy-wise, she talks about regime change.
You want to support someone that's in there with Obama and Kamala? I mean, are you?
You're moving the goalposts here. We're talking about.
I don't think I am.
No, you are. You're bringing up the whole Tulsi Gabbard thing.
Do you think Tulsi Gabbard would have brought you Medicare for All when she was out there on the campaign trail?
It wasn't called Medicare for All. It was called something else. But it was a universal healthcare system.
No,
I don't know if you're aware. I did want to bring this up because a lot of people
her plan was the same. Speaking about her on board with Kamala with Modi. I mean, she also was on board with Kamala with the healthcare plan. It was the same thing. Medicare for all who want it.
No, it wasn't that. But I'm not going to argue about that. But I just wanted to point out.
I think it does matter though. What type of politician you support though.
It wasn't that. I did it. So I supported. What made her again? What made her throwing smears at me because I supported Bernie Sanders, and your whole go-to is you supported Tulsi Gabbard. I like Tulsi Gabbard as I thought she had great foreign policy and great on civil liberties, but I ended up supporting Bernie Sanders, and I shouldn't have supported anybody to be honest. Looking back at it now, so I just want to point out though, Medicare for All is Bernie Sanders's bill. It's Bernie Sanders's plan. There are other ways of achieving a universal healthcare system. Literally every major country that has universal healthcare has some form of private insurance. Just so you know, the UK, they have predominantly public insurance, but they also have some private insurance for people who want specialists in elective surgery. In the Dutch and the Finnish and the French all have forms of private insurance. To talk about Medicare for All, universal health care, there's so many ways we could get to it. That goes to my back argument that for me, Medicare for All is a compromise. I want nationalized health care, period. I want everybody to have access to actually have healthcare, healthcare.
Do you think private health insurance should not exist?
No, I don't think it should exist at all. I am against any form of private insurance. I'm simply telling you that the vast majority of countries out there have some form of private insurance, whether it's for elective surgery or sometimes it's for more rapid response and etc. You can go through it. You can find it. You can Google it. It's all over the place. The UK, France, all of these countries have some form of private insurance. I genuinely believe we should take out all insurance companies and big pharma out from legislation. That's my whole point.
UK also has a medical system where basically the government runs the hospitals as well. So
of course, yes.
To me, that's the idea. I mean, the National Health Service is the ideal, in my opinion.
But the problem is, you said yourself, right? You said oh, it's not possible right now to get Medicare for all.
Of course, yes,
right.
of course.
I think it's possible to get Medicare for all. That doesn't mean that the fight ends there. For me, it's a compromise. I think it's possible to get it if people actually demand it enough. Power concedes nothing without demand. I don't understand.
Why are you fine with Medicare for all as the compromise, though, and not, if you're someone who's
I'm not
for
fine.
reform
I'm
at
saying
all?
that's where the fight begins, because, like I
So
said,
you're
I don't want people
so
to
it's
continue dying
incrementalism.
without their insulin.
Right. Showing that incrementalism works. If you want something that's further than Medicare for all, but
That's not incrementalism. Incrementalism is saying, we can't get it now. I live in reality. So we just need more squad members. What? For what?
No,
like,
but
we don't need that.
No, but no. Incrementalism is when you compromise on something to get something that's not exactly what you want,
Aren't
but it
you
gets
compromising?
you closer there. But again, I've never said I'm not an incrementalist where it's necessary.
Oh, okay.
I've never said I'm not. I mean, that's why I wanted Bernie Sanders to win, because I don't believe in incrementalism if it can be avoided. But we're now living in a situation where incrementalism is the best we're gonna be able to do for now. And so instead of helping nobody, instead of doing an all or nothing scenario, I am willing to get help for more people. And that's what incrementalism involves. How does
direct action and marches for Medicare for all help nobody? How does the working class rising up and building an intersectional class movement put a damper in your electoral attempts?
How does lowering the age for Medicare not help anybody? I mean, that's something that I've heard you guys not be for as well.
It helps a very minimal amount of people. Like I said, it's crumbs. Lowering
the age of Medicare for all will get more direct help to people right now than every single Medicare for all march will do right now. You're saying
crumbs, because the more they give that and you just take it and accept it, the less you get in the long run. That's the less you get.
No, because we've seen that's not how it works all the time. But lowering the age of Medicare for all now by 5 years means that all the people who are now within that 5-year window will now have Medicare. Those crumbs mean something to those people. Your march, which you're advocating for above my version of incrementalism, will not even give people crumbs. It will give them nothing. It will give them an empty plate.
It shows to the vast majority of Americans that the politicians aren't doing what they're set out there to do. If AOC, and here's another criticism you guys come at us for. Why don't you ever criticize the Republicans? Why don't you ever criticize the right? Republicans didn't fucking run on Medicare for all. They didn't run on $15 minimum wage. They didn't run on a Green New Deal. They didn't run on any of that crap. I don't care. Like, I know where they are. I know where they stand. I know where the fight is with them, with faux socialists, the Foxes of the world, the white moderates of the world. With those people, you have to unmask them, because people are still duped. And as long as they are duped into thinking that these faux revolutionaries are going to get them anything but the same incremental bullshit, we are never going to get anywhere in this system. We are going to continue to perpetually lose. They do not use their leverage. They have done absolutely nothing tangible. You have said they moved the overtone window, or that, again, that's not tangible for the working class. They haven't done any of that. And when we criticize them, we are seen as negative, as unrealistic. She just called us negative Nancy's. She just called people, she belittles them, like their opinions don't matter. She works for us. It's that simple.
Can you just explain to me how? Because you're going on, but you're not addressing what I said. How does lowering the age of Medicare do less than just marching?
Just marching. What does just marching mean, though? Like, seriously.
Do I believe in direct action and people should force politicians on the ground through protest? Of course.
But you're not willing to do it.
Of course I am.
Okay.
Of course I am.
But
I'm also not belittling people who are doing it, like you have with Cori Bush's protest, which actually directly resulted in the eviction moratorium extension.
It did not directly result in the eviction moratorium extension. Are you kidding? They were going to do that anyway. It's obvious.
Obvious. They were literally out there saying in writing to the press they're not going to do it. They did not have the power to do it. And then Cori Bush. Why would they say it? Makes them look bad. It makes them look bad.
No.
Cori Bush went out there, and she put pressure on them, and they felt like they needed to act because they looked bad.
She put pressure on them with her staffers and like a few people who aren't representative of the working class.
Hell,
and then
that
in
shows
turn
just how
donations.
powerful that was. That shows just how powerful that was, that she was able to do that.
That's why so much media attention was centered around her and AOC, but not on, a 56 city march that happened. Like, that's why. That's like, because that's why there were no cops surrounding Cori Bush and AOC, and why they kicked people out after they left. Is that why?
Maybe if you guys strategically looked at how important it was to have people like Cori Bush and AOC on your side, if nothing more than to get press attention, then you would have had a strategy that worked.
They need to be on our side. I don't need to make. I'm not in power. Why they're in Congress.
But there's a difference between pressuring someone and then calling them a fraud to their face, and how you're not gonna ally with them. Like, what do they see as the point of reaching out to you guys?
The journalists that were there, like Max Blumenthal and Frank Analysis, did not call them a fraud to their faces. They simply were asking questions that they couldn't answer.
I'm not talking about that specifically. I mean,
okay.
these people, I have no issue with Max Blumenthal. I personally, I'm pretty sure actually I've been on the Majority Report a number of times when he was on the show, and me alongside Michael Brooks interviewed him. I have no problem with people putting pressure on these politicians. I'm talking about just the outright attacks where it's not even criticism. It's just like the campaigns just to call them frauds and to say like the random knocking them that has nothing to do with policy, just the attacks for them doing exactly what you want.
All right, let's talk policy then, because members of the squad actually voted to give police more money for themselves. Members of the squad also voted to give more money to Israel, okay, via weapons. So again, policy-wise, they have absolutely done nothing. And by the way, when they gave more money to Capitol Police, they were initially all going to vote no until they realized that would kill the bill. And then once they realized that, you know what they did? They had a meeting with Pelosi and their squad, and they selected, okay, you guys are going to vote present. And three of them did, and they voted present.
Right, and they're not. They have bad votes. Sure, I'm not on both everything they do.
But that's policy. That's policy.
Right. Every politician has bad votes. I mean, if you look at the overall record, I mean, you're not going to find a more progressive congressperson than AOC, Ilhan Omar, Rashida Tlaib, Cori Bush, Jamal Bowman. I mean, these are people who are hands down the most progressive people we have in office.
They are made to look the most progressive people in office, but are they actually policy-wise that much different than the moderate Democrats? Not really. And that's my whole point. You hinge your strategy on allyship with people who are not on your side. They pretend to be on your side. They're there to replace the old guard. They're not there to actually push anything forward. So all we have left is an outside push from the people, from the ground up, to demand. And by the way, Boehner,
who gives it to them?
Boehner cried.
Who will respond to your demand?
Really quickly, though, Republicans were able to make John Boehner cry. They were able to get him to resign. Why didn't the squad do that? Why can't they stand strong? They have enough. For that specific police bill, for the Capitol Police that gave money to the state agencies for that specific bill, if they had voted no, if the three of them had not voted present, it wouldn't have passed. So is obvious where they're being used.
Do you realize how the Tea Party took over the Republican Party?
What do you mean? I just told you.
How did they do it? How did they do it?
Please explain.
How did they do it?
Please explain.
Electorally.
Yes.
The Tea Party caucus is much bigger than any progressive caucus. Let's talk about the progressive caucus, which again, we've already discussed, doesn't really always include people who we would even consider, both of you or I would consider progressives. Right. But the Tea Party caucus, huge, bigger than Justice Democrats. The squad has not even a small percentage of it. They electorally took over the Republican Party.
They used their leverage, which the squad refused to do. And time again, they were supposed to be tangible to get a $15 minimum wage. They didn't even do that.
They're not big enough.
No, but that's the excuse. They have millions of followers together. AOC tomorrow. And this is my issue with Cori Bush's 12-hour, right before the eviction moratorium expired, protest of sorts. It wasn't done months ago. It wasn't done months before. They knew about it months before. Why didn't AOC join the Medicare for All march and say, we're going to march just like Shama Sawant does on a local city council level? Why didn't AOC go and say, we're going to meet here. I have 12,000,067 whatever followers. We're going to start this movement until we get it. I will be with you until we get it. We're not leaving until we get it. That is using your leverage. That is using that is direct action from the working class in coalition with an ally. She's not an ally. She's not doing that. A real ally uses their political leverage to help the working class through direct action to change things. And if we don't have allies in Congress, what we have to do is force their hand through direct action. And that is the strategy. You may not think it much of a strategy, but that's where we're at, because that's where we're at in late stage capitalism. You are trying to reform something that cannot be reformed. Save a crumbling empire that cannot be saved. Putting Band-Aid solutions on things that are just, it's not going to happen this way. And this is why people are frustrated with that sector of the left, because the squad continues voting in line with the Democratic Party. And when we call it out and when we're rightfully angry, because a lot of the working class doesn't have time for this shit, like, then you say we're being unproductive, we're being mean, we're calling them fraud. Why is the language, why is the anger so much worse than the lack of action, than the lack of promise on things they ran on? They took money from the working class. I supported AOC wholeheartedly. I did fundraisers for AOC. Like, this is, for me, it's not like a hatred of AOC. It is holding the politician accountable and understanding that we've tried this method of inside-outside strategy. We've tried this method of electoralism. It's not working. Now it's time to try something else. And that support of the Democratic Party and Justice Democrats and all this bullshit isn't going to get us any tangible wins. We have seen that time and time again. And its history tells us that that's not going to work.
I mean, history tells us that it works all the time, being that that's how we've gotten every single progressive policy that we have today. I mean, how do you think we got Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid?
Through people marching on the streets.
How do you think we got
That's how we got it.
And yes, and what did they do? And who did they end up having to work with?
They ended up moving politicians. Politicians didn't move them. It comes from the people. That's what I'm saying. There's pressure built. The civil rights movement didn't begin like with politicians simply doing that because they suddenly had a coming to Jesus moment. Of course.
I say that all the time. I say all the time as well. Obviously, movements on the ground work and it helps push politicians a certain way. But they also needed those politicians to actually enact those policies, didn't they?
Guys, I got to cut in. We're beyond the hour. And it's been a great debate. Thank you so much, Matt, for coming on.
All right. Sounds good. Unfortunately, we didn't feel like I'm getting cut off a little bit here, but I get it. It's, we went on for a long time. All I can say is that I am on board with you when it comes to activism and on the ground grassroots activism and getting movements to work to push politicians and hold their feet to the fire and hold them accountable. But at the same time, we need to work with those politicians to enact these policies. If your idea is that we should not elect people to help push those policies, if your idea is that the squad did not get done what they needed to get done at where they were or where they are now, and so we should give up on getting anyone else in there, and we should turn against Nina Turners and all the other type of people who are like Nina Turner and AOC and Ilhan Omar, and not work to get more people like that in Congress, then that's where I disagree with you, because at the end of the day, it's pushing them that'll help get these things to happen. I mean, clearly, we're not going to get these things happening by pushing a Congress full of Republicans and Democrats in red states or
nobody. Okay, so
establishment Dems.
Okay, thank you. I'm just going to close out. No, nobody's saying that. Nobody's saying that we're not going to work. That we're going to be anti Nina Turner. People are. What we're saying here on the left is that these people are not going to do what you want them to do without pressure. That's it.
Sure.
That's the point. And electoralism doesn't work on its own. Direct action has to come from the people, from the ground up, in order to push anything. And when you're trying to push incrementalism in a system that is rigged, that it's not working for the working class, you're just promoting the perpetuation of the system that is crushing us all. And that's why, as somebody that doesn't ascribe to my ideology, I don't believe that this is reformable. I believe the next step is revolution, and that manifests itself through direct action and not through electoral reform. So that's where I'm at.
Matt, take the last 30 seconds. Let's wrap this up, and then we can go on your show sometime soon and continue this beautiful debate, okay?
Yeah, sounds great. I mean, I thank you both for having me on. I had a good time tonight. Really appreciate you guys engaging. I disagree with you guys on a number of issues. I think that, when it comes to forming alliances with the right, I think that's a problem in terms of the usual sort of issues that come along with that. I mean, the idea, we didn't even get to talk about this, but I'll end with this because I think this is a common area where it's misconstrued. The idea that Fred Hampton worked with the Young Patriots, who were like a white supremacist or racist group. And this is just not the case. The fact of the matter is the Young Patriots were a anti-capitalist group of Southern white people who at the time just used the Confederate flag as
and they
a
would
means
be
to bring
smeared
more
today.
people
They would
on
be
their
smeared
side.
today.
Well, they also wouldn't have used the Confederate flag because the politics at the time were different, and they actually ended up not using the Confederate flag anymore once they realized it wasn't working. So they would have been politically smart to deal with today's politics.
Yeah.
They were an anti-capitalist leftist group. They were just comprised of white Southern people. They weren't Boogaloo boys who fought for capitalism and private enterprise taking over police departments and the court system. They weren't
a monolith, and neither are the Boogaloo boys. So just let's stop referring to people as monoliths.
You could. This is history. You could look this up.
I know, Matt. Let's wrap this up. We've also talked to Reverend Eddie Chambers, who talked to the KKK. That's beside the point. I mean, we can continue this on right now. I think we've gone a long time. Let's just
then with the Fiorella side of things, I completely agree with direct action. I think it's incredibly important in order to push politicians, but I also think at the same time you need to work in a way that's productive so that you can get those politicians to feel that pressure and want to work with you, instead of feeling like you're suddenly joining a right-wing attack on them by calling them
being nice to politicians isn't going to work.
No, it's not about being nice. It's about sticking to the policy issues and attacking them on policy issues. I'm not saying don't attack them. I'm saying attack them on policy issues.
I attack them on. I attack them on policy issues.
Why don't you attack them on? Do you not support Medicare for all?
A time for guys. I know you.
Right.
This debate. You can sell tickets to this sucker, man. Let me tell you something. This has been so entertaining, and I think we all learned a lot today and whatnot. And the one thing is that we have to continue on with these conversations. So Matt, thank you so much for coming on. Have us on your show so you can host it and you can have home court advantage. You can start off with Fee, and then I'll go second next time so you guys can continue this fiery debate. But I got a lot of respect for you coming on today. A lot more respect than some of the colleagues you work with, not to take shots at them, but I've always looked at you different than them. And thank you so much, Mr. Binder. I appreciate it.
Oh, you got my name right, finally.
I practiced upstairs. I'll
take that as success. All right. Thanks a lot, guys. Have a great night. It was a pleasure.
Thank you, man.
Bye.
Thank you for combing your hair. You look great today.
Thank you.
All right, brother.
Take care.
All right, guys. Should I read some super chats? You want to come over here?
Yeah, I can do that.
Yeah.
We can do this briefly.
Really quickly? Okay.
So, super race, right? You got
Yeah. Yeah, let me pull up the Rokfin. Sorry, guys. I wasn't. I want to read some of these. I got all fired up, and that wasn't even I didn't even get a chance. I feel like we didn't get a chance to really go there. Next time I actually want to bring up some of my some of the Lenin points to you guys. Lenin talked about this
he said
decades ago. Decades ago.
Trey
we
Wright?
cannot continue believing in the faux socialists.
Trey Wright says, love you all. It's really quick. We'll be done. Margaret, thank you for the Super Ray contribution. It is always appreciated during the debate. 123 watchers on the Rokfin. I'm so proud of you guys. Over 600 and change on the YouTubes. That's more than Tim Black got on his third rant. It's kind of like Nightmare on Elm Street 3. really, really sucks. I mean, the first one was okay. Second one, the third one, you're done with it, right? So that's where I'm at. BX Kami says, Fee is right. Capitalism oppresses every worker regardless of ideology. Workers of the world unite.
That's
I think
right,
that was
BX
the theme
Kami.
that we had. I had a little bit of a different approach, fam. I think you
Oh,
guys
yeah.
had a great spirit debate.
Yeah, I was like, Pasta, why are you so nice? Oh my God, you're going to make me look like an asshole. And,
Everybody
like,
knows the what's the word I'm looking for? The way we look at things. Help me out over here. My English.
I don't know, fam. You speak English, right?
I know. I don't even. You know what I'm saying? Jesus Christ. Well, everybody knows that you're the harsh one and I'm the nice one. Not perspective.
You're the schmoozer. I'm not. Like, that's the thing. I'm not gonna fucking like hold back on certain things, on certain beliefs, and like there's a lot of the Sam Cedar left that comes like very polite and very like friendly, but really like they're like laughing in your face. And I'm not saying he was doing that, but I'm saying like a large contingent of them do that. And and the whole argument that we must accept not having healthcare during a fucking like what passed as a pandemic is like ridiculous. Like to me, like that is unacceptable, especially if you're going to call yourself a leftist. Like for me, it's like how do you
the election thing is hard too as well because he honestly believes that elections are fair and he's like, look at the data. When we said we can show you data to show you that the elections are fair. So that's another point. Once again, we believe that we don't have a democracy. That's all the super chats there were.
Okay, guys, thank you so much for this.
But anyways, huh? Oh yeah, AREM.
AREM.
Beautifully done. Did we take care of AREM? I don't know if we did. AREM, hit us up. We love you. Oh, no, it was Embel Fateh.
Okay.
AREM, thank you so much.
Rocky Bellinger.
What did he say? Oh, he says, proud of you, fam. We're proud of you, too,
Thank you, Rocky. We love you.
We love you. And we love all you guys who came on for this special edition late night tomorrow. We have Max Kaiser and Stacey A. Bear coming on the show. Going to talk a little bit about Bitcoin. And, wow, that's at the end, fam. That's what it's going to be over. And we're also going to talk about how these people put stuff in the infrastructure bill about crypto, and we're going to talk about a lot of stuff.
So Pasta and Fee did a fantastic job debating, defending your positions because we don't really do debates. We don't really do debates, but this was really interesting.
I love debates, but
it's like when somebody asked us, well, why?
But I wouldn't debate
Bausch. Somebody said, well, not for nothing. Like, really, I have no interest to talk to Sam Cedar, Emma, or Francesca Fiorella. Anybody who works with Fiorentini. I'm sorry.
Jesus Christ.
Fiorentini.
Don't call her that. That's my name.
Francesca. I have no interest in Amers. There's Amers coming in, creeping in the door. My summary of the problem is Matt is way too comfortable to ascribe to real solutions. It's simple. Well, some people think that. Slow news day. Steve. I could feel the eyes roll that were taking place in Fee's head. They were all over the place. Well, you know what, Steve? It's because we don't play team sports. That's the big difference. Peter DiLorenzo. Thanks, guys. I'm going to have to watch the repost to see Pasta in action. This discussion needs to be had.
Sure.
And that's the one thing when somebody said, why are you guys on the left having these debates? You just want to go tear each other apart and have everybody watch? Like, no. I'm hoping that we come out with some answers, that people really get something from this. Because that is a debate right now, right on the left, right? It's like people like Matt who feel that, hey, man, the squad is our best chance to get anything done. We need to support them, not throw them under the bus, where we feel like, no, these politicians have let us down. They're really not fighting for us, and they're duping the people, in fact, and we need to expose them. And we always do expose them on policy, so I think it was a really good,
we definitely expose them on policy.
DC says, rest in power. Left libertarian sketch comic legend Trevor Moore always question authority and never back down. Thank you so much, DC. And Christopher Dobby, Parliament is a collaboration with the right. Can't have peace without it. Well, that's point of the things I said. Like, it's not won conventionally. It's reached through compromise. Plain and simple. That's why I kind of said I'm a leftist libertarian. I look at myself as a populist. I don't want to say the right is bad because we're never going to conventionally win this fight to convince people on the right that we on the left are completely right. It's going to be reached through compromise and understanding. So that was my position.
Yeah, and my position was I disagreed with you. I think we needed to get rid of capitalism, and because capitalism is imperialism is the highest form of capitalism. So for me, it's one and the same. Whatever. It doesn't mean that any ism isn't corruptible. Every ism is corruptible, and at this point, I believe that we need to be post-partisan when it comes to uniting the working class. That doesn't mean that I'm changing my ideology. It just means like we need to fight against the state agencies, against this fascist overtake, And then once we have the people in power, then we can talk about ideas on this and that.
Yeah, yeah.
But if we don't get there, we're all screwed. And that's the point.
That's what I said too. Get rid of these elitists, get in a room, then decide what's best for all of us. All right, ladies and gentlemen, join us tomorrow. Thank you so much for watching the debate with Matt Binder and Fiorella Isabel, and then Matt Binder and Pasta Jardula. Johnny ran the whole show, made that awesome thumbnail, and hopefully we'll be able to do it again on his show. So we're being fair and going on his home turf. So for Pasta Jardula,
Fiorella,
Johnny Sue on the ones and twos.
Convo out.
Thanks for watching, everybody.
Bye.